Throughout history, the practice of concubinage has been a reflection of the social, economic, and political dynamics of the time. The phrase, "King so-and-so kept many concubines," is not merely a historical anecdote, but an encapsulation of the ways in which power and wealth have often been intertwined with the subjugation and exploitation of women. This script delves deeply into the history, cultural nuances, and individual stories surrounding concubinage, with a particular focus on China, where the practice was deeply embedded in the social fabric for millennia. The term concubine carries multiple definitions and connotations depending on the cultural and historical context. In general, a concubine is a woman who lives with a man but holds a status lower than that of a wife. However, the specifics of this arrangement could vary greatly, ranging from a consensual relationship to one that bordered on or fully constituted sexual slavery. In many societies, concubines were women who, for various reasons, could not or did not marry, but were taken into the household of a powerful man, often to bear children and fulfill other roles traditionally associated with wives. Concubinage was a common practice in many ancient civilizations, including the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans. However, it was in China that concubinage developed into a highly structured and institutionalized practice that would influence the culture for thousands of years. To fully understand the significance of concubinage in Chinese history, it is essential to explore the historical and cultural context in which it developed. Concubinage was not unique to China. It existed in various forms across many cultures and time periods. In the Islamic world, concubinage was also common, particularly in the context of harems, where women were kept for the pleasure of sultans and other powerful men. In ancient Rome, concubinage was a legally recognized relationship, distinct from marriage but still subject to certain social and legal norms. In the Western medieval period, concubines often lived in quasi-marital arrangements with nobles and kings, serving as partners and mothers to their children, though without the legal recognition afforded to wives. In many of these societies, the status and treatment of concubines varied widely, often depending on the character of the man they served. A cruel master could subject his concubine to harsh treatment, while a more benevolent man might ensure that his concubines were well cared for, provided with shelter, food, and even some degree of safety, particularly during tumultuous times. In the broader historical context, concubinage can be seen as a reflection of the power dynamics between men and women, where women were often seen as property or commodities to be traded and controlled. The institution of concubinage allowed powerful men to assert their dominance and wealth by acquiring multiple women, while also ensuring the continuation of their lineage through the production of male heirs. Concubinage in China was distinct in several ways, though it also shared certain similarities with practices in other parts of the world. Within the imperial household, concubinage was not merely a private matter, but a highly regulated institution with significant political implications. The emperor's concubines played crucial roles in the maintenance of dynastic continuity and the broader workings of the imperial court. In Imperial China, which persisted until the Communist Revolution of 1949, a man was legally permitted to have only one wife, but he could take as many concubines as he could afford to support. The number of concubines a man maintained was often seen as a measure of his wealth and power. Within the imperial family, concubinage was a deeply entrenched practice, with roots likely stretching back over 2,000 years to the Han Dynasty, 25 AD, 220 AD. The law at the time stipulated that the higher a man's rank, the more concubines he was permitted to have. This system created a hierarchical structure within the household, where the wife held the highest status, followed by concubines, who themselves were ranked according to their favor with the man and the number of sons they bore him. The wife often had the authority to approve or disapprove of new concubines, though this power varied depending on the husband's wishes and the dynamics of the household. Concubines were often acquired from a variety of sources. Some were purchased from slave markets in ancient times, while others were daughters of families seeking financial support or political favor. These women, many of whom were quite young, were brought into households to serve their masters in various capacities, though their primary role was often sexual. Within the imperial household, concubines held different ranks, which determined their influence and privileges. The highest-ranking concubines, known as gui fei, or noble consorts, enjoyed considerable power and wealth, often rivaling that of the empress herself. However, lower-ranking concubines, especially those who failed to produce male heirs, could be relegated to lives of obscurity and neglect, living out their days in the shadows of the imperial palace. The relationship between the wife and the concubines was often fraught with tension and rivalry. The wife, or Zheng Shi, held the highest status in the household, but she was often in a precarious position, especially if she failed to produce a male heir. Concubines, particularly those who bore sons, could challenge the wife's authority and position, leading to power struggles within the household. Life as a concubine in Imperial China was marked by a complex mix of sisterhood, rivalry, palace intrigue, and more. While some concubines developed close relationships with each other, others were locked in bitter competition for the favor of their master. The quality of life for a concubine largely depended on the character of the man who held her in this type of bondage. A cruel man would lead to harsh treatment, while a kind man might offer better conditions. Within the imperial household, concubines could hold considerable influence, especially if they bore sons. Sons born to concubines were considered part of the royal family, though they held a lower rank than those born to the emperor's wife. However, history records instances where the sons of concubines ascended to the throne, often through favoritism, civil strife, or other circumstances. The presence of multiple concubines often led to intricate power dynamics within the imperial court, as different factions vied for influence and control. The role of concubines in the imperial court was not limited to producing heirs. They were also expected to be well-versed in the arts, literature, and music, as well as the intricacies of court etiquette and protocol. A concubine's ability to navigate the complex social dynamics of the court could determine her success and influence. Those who excelled in these areas could gain favor with the emperor and secure a more privileged position for themselves and their children. However, the competition among concubines could be ruthless. In some cases, concubines resorted to manipulation, deceit, and even murder to eliminate their rivals and secure their positions. The use of poison, for example, was a common method employed by concubines to dispose of their competitors. These power struggles often created a tense and dangerous environment within the imperial court, where alliances were constantly shifting and no one could be trusted. Before a woman could become a concubine, she had to undergo a rigorous selection process. This was especially true within the imperial household, where the selection of concubines was a matter of state importance. Candidates for concubinage were often chosen from the daughters of high-ranking officials or wealthy merchants, who could afford to educate their daughters and prepare them for life at court. The selection process could take up to a year and involved a series of tests and evaluations. Although physical beauty was a significant factor, it was not the only criterion. Candidates were also expected to demonstrate intelligence, discipline, and good health. Their mannerisms, voice, and body language had to align with the standards of the time, or at least the preferences of the man considering them. At the highest levels, a candidate would also need to be witty, conversational, and possess either a basic or extensive knowledge of Chinese morals and philosophy. The selection of concubines within the imperial household was a highly formalized process, often overseen by the empress or senior court officials. Potential concubines were subjected to a series of physical examinations to ensure they met the standards of beauty and health. These examinations were followed by tests of their intelligence, cultural knowledge, and social graces. Only those who passed all these tests were considered for selection as concubines. Once selected, a concubine's life was heavily regulated. The emperor's concubines, for example, were not permitted to enter the Forbidden City, the center of the imperial household and government, without his written permission. Moreover, unless granted special written permission as the emperor's favorite, a concubine could not approach him. She had to wait to be summoned. These strict rules underscored the power dynamics at play and the precarious nature of a concubine's position. The lives of concubines were also shaped by the rituals and ceremonies of the imperial court. They were required to participate in various ceremonies and events, often serving as attendants to the empress or other senior members of the court. These rituals reinforced the hierarchical structure of the court and the concubine's subordinate status. However, they also provided opportunities for concubines to gain favor with the emperor or other influential figures. One of the primary roles of a concubine in Imperial China was to bear sons. Sons born to the emperor and a concubine were considered part of the royal family and would be raised in privilege. These sons were not considered illegitimate, but held a lower rank than those born to the emperor's wife. However, the importance of producing male heirs meant that concubines who bore sons could gain significant influence and power within the court. The practice of favoring sons over daughters was deeply ingrained in Chinese culture, reflecting broader societal norms that prioritized male heirs for the continuation of family lines and the preservation of family wealth and status. This emphasis on producing sons often placed considerable pressure on concubines, who could see their fortunes rise or fall depending on their ability to fulfill this role. The role of concubines in dynastic succession was particularly significant in the context of the imperial court. The emperor's concubines were expected to produce male heirs who could continue the imperial lineage. In cases where the empress failed to produce a male heir, the sons of concubines could be elevated to the status of crown prince, thus securing the concubine's position and influence within the court. However, the process of succession was often fraught with uncertainty and conflict. The competition among concubines to produce male heirs could lead to intense rivalries, as each sought to position her son as the rightful successor to the throne. These rivalries could result in political intrigue, alliances, and betrayals, as concubines and their supporters maneuvered to secure power and influence. One of the most famous examples of a concubine wielding significant power in Chinese history is Empress Dowager Cixi. Born in 1835, Cixi began her life in the imperial court as a lower-ranking concubine to Emperor Xianfeng. Her fortunes changed dramatically when she gave birth to the emperor's only male heir, who would later become Emperor Tongji. Following the emperor's death, Cixi orchestrated a coup, removing the regents who were meant to guide her young son and placing herself in a position of power. Although Emperor Tongji's rule was short-lived, Cixi continued to wield considerable influence through her nephew, Emperor Guangxu, whom she adopted and placed on the throne. Throughout her life, Cixi was a formidable political figure, guiding China through some of its most tumultuous events, including the Taiping Rebellion and the Boxer Rebellion. Cixi's legacy is complex and often controversial. She has been criticized for the rampant corruption that characterized her reign and for the significant encroachments by foreign powers into China during this period. However, she also played a crucial role in maintaining the Qing dynasty's power during a time of great internal and external challenges. Her story is a testament to the potential for concubines to rise to positions of extraordinary influence, even in a system designed to keep them subordinate. Empress Dowager Cixi's rise to power highlights the potential for concubines to navigate the complex power dynamics of the imperial court and secure positions of influence. Despite starting as a lower-ranking concubine, Cixi's intelligence, ambition, and political acumen allowed her to outmaneuver her rivals and consolidate power. Her story is a testament to the resilience and agency of women in a system that sought to limit their autonomy and confine them to subordinate roles. Cixi's influence extended far beyond the imperial court. As the de facto ruler of China for much of the late 19th century, she played a crucial role in shaping the country's policies and responses to external pressures. Her decisions during key events such as the Taiping Rebellion, the First Sino-Japanese War, and the Boxer Rebellion had lasting impacts on China's trajectory in the modern era. While her legacy is often viewed through a critical lens, it is undeniable that Cixi was a formidable and influential figure in Chinese history. One of the most controversial aspects of life as a concubine in Imperial China was the practice of foot binding. Foot binding involved tightly binding the feet of young girls or adolescents, preventing the feet from growing properly. The toes would curl under the ball of the foot, rendering them useless. This practice was regarded, for various historical reasons, as a mark of beauty, wealth, and refinement. Foot binding's popularity waxed and waned over the centuries, but it was in vogue among the upper class at the turn of the 20th century. The practice was officially outlawed by the nationalists in 1912 and further suppressed by the communists after their rise to power in 1949. Foot binding left women essentially crippled, often unable to walk without assistance, and significantly limited their ability to escape. For concubines, foot binding was both a symbol of their status and a tool of oppression. It marked them as women of the upper class, desirable to powerful men, but it also physically constrained them, reinforcing their dependence on the men who controlled their lives. The practice of foot binding is a stark reminder of the ways in which women's bodies were manipulated and controlled in the service of male power. The excruciating pain and lifelong disability that resulted from foot binding were often justified by the societal ideal that small feet were a mark of femininity and attractiveness. This cruel practice reflected the broader societal norms that prioritized physical beauty and subservience over the well-being and autonomy of women. The origins of foot binding are debated, but it is generally believed to have begun during the Song dynasty, 960–1279 AD, and became increasingly widespread during the Ming and Qing dynasties. The practice was initially confined to the elite classes, but eventually spread to other social strata, becoming a symbol of status and refinement across Chinese society. Foot binding was not only a physical manifestation of the control men exerted over women, but also a means of ensuring women's dependence on their husbands or masters. Bound feet made it difficult for women to move freely, reinforcing the idea that their place was in the home or the harem, where they could be closely monitored and controlled. The pain and disability caused by foot binding also served as a constant reminder of the sacrifices women were expected to make to conform to societal ideals of beauty and femininity. The Communist Revolution of 1949 further accelerated the decline of concubinage, as the new government under Mao Zedong sought to eliminate practices that were seen as remnants of the old feudal order. The Communist Party promoted women's liberation as a key component of its ideology, and concubinage was officially outlawed. Women were encouraged to participate in the workforce and were given legal rights that were previously denied to them. However, despite these official changes, the legacy of concubinage and the gender dynamics it embodied did not disappear overnight. The transition to modernity brought new challenges and contradictions, particularly as China underwent rapid industrialization and urbanization. While the legal institution of concubinage was abolished, the social and economic conditions that had supported it for centuries continued to influence gender relations in more subtle ways. The decline of concubinage also had significant implications for the structure of Chinese society. The practice had long been a means of consolidating power and wealth, with wealthy men using concubinage to secure alliances and produce heirs. As the practice waned, new forms of social and economic organization emerged, reshaping the roles and expectations of men and women in Chinese society. Despite the official abolition of concubinage, the idea of women as possessions or status symbols persisted in various forms. The cultural legacy of concubinage continued to influence attitudes towards women, particularly in the context of marriage and relationships. In some cases, the decline of formal concubinage gave rise to informal practices that mirrored the power dynamics of the past, such as the keeping of mistresses or the phenomenon of second wives.
我就过去我就天天哭，天天哭，你疼到过来就要。
The psychological effects of concubinage on women, both historically and in modern times, are profound and multifaceted. Historically, concubines often faced significant emotional and psychological challenges, including feelings of isolation, powerlessness, and insecurity. The constant competition for favor and the precarious nature of their positions could lead to chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. Many concubines were separated from their families at a young age and thrust into an environment where their worth was measured primarily by their ability to please their master and produce male heirs. In modern times, women involved in sugar daddy relationships may experience similar psychological challenges. While some may enter these relationships with a sense of agency and control, the power dynamics inherent in these arrangements can create feelings of dependence and vulnerability. The transactional nature of these relationships can also lead to a sense of objectification, where women feel valued only for their physical appearance or ability to provide companionship, rather than for their intrinsic worth as individuals. The history of concubinage is a complex and often troubling reflection of the ways in which power, wealth, and gender have intersected throughout history. While the practice of concubinage has largely faded from the legal and social landscape, its legacy continues to shape our understanding of gender dynamics and the ways in which women's bodies and lives have been controlled and exploited in the service of male power. In examining the history of concubinage, particularly in Imperial China, we gain insight into the broader social and political structures that have shaped human history. The stories of individual concubines, from the nameless women who lived in the shadow of powerful men to figures like Empress Dowager Cixi, remind us of the resilience and agency that women have often displayed, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The practice of concubinage, both in historical contexts and its modern parallels, highlights the enduring nature of gender inequality and the ways in which power dynamics continue to shape relationships between men and women. Whether through the formalized institution of concubinage in Imperial China or the informal, transactional relationships seen in the sugar daddy phenomenon, these practices reveal the deep-seated cultural and economic forces that perpetuate the subjugation and exploitation of women. As we reflect on the legacy of concubinage, it is important to recognize the progress that has been made in advancing women's rights and autonomy, while also acknowledging the ongoing challenges that remain. The rise of modern forms of concubinage, facilitated by technology and globalized economies, underscores the need for continued efforts to address gender inequality and ensure that all individuals have the opportunity to engage in relationships based on mutual respect, consent, and equality. In understanding the history and evolution of concubinage, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities of human relationships and the ways in which power, wealth, and gender intersect to shape our lives. By learning from the past, we can better navigate the challenges of the present and work towards a future where all individuals, regardless of gender, are free to pursue their own paths and define their own identities.